so too.
All right, let's open our meeting, bring the meeting to order. Our first and only item of business tonight is the public hearing on some changes we are making to our local regs on both sewer systems and wells. The major thrust of this is we are eliminating the requirement for low perk soils to increase the distances from a facility to a number of things, from wells, private water supplies, and wetlands, and a number of other things. This is because we're bringing our regs in line with the state's Title V, which decided that instead of moving everything away from a potential hazard, as the effluent from the sewage system could run more quickly through the low perk soils, coarse soils, it would be better to elevate the system further above it so that digestion was assured versus moving things away from it and making sure the water table was pure in any event. Therefore, when you're working in 2-minute soils or less, instead of being a requirement of 4 feet above the water table, you have to be 5 feet. And this is in alliance with Title V. Also, we have always had a reg that if you are working with a area that you modeling is not definitive, and you wanted to do an in-season observation of the water table, we added an additional foot to that offset. As we're not sure if we're catching the water table at the highest point, if we're just doing one observation in the spring. So instead of a 5-foot additional offset in normal soils, we would require 6 if you were basing the water table on a one-shot observation. We are maintaining, in lines again with Title V, the trench system reserved between trenches is proposed. 2 percolation tests are required.
Chris, can I break in quick?
Yes, please, sir.
So if you're gonna have a separate primary and a separate reserve, you're only gonna be doing 1 perk in each area now instead of 2?
Yes, that's in lines with Title V.
So I don't know if we need to say that.
Exactly.
The trench system is reserved between, it's already in Title V.
Yep.
So if you don't wanna say.
Well,
you don't have to.
it was brought up by a couple of
I think
engineers.
Mackenzie had questioned it, yeah.
Right, so I just thought we would be.
His question was, you don't know if you're gonna do primary.
Right.
But if you're doing 2 perks, period, it doesn't matter. You either have
Right.
one here with primary reserve, or if they're between, you've still got 2 within.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Well, I think we should always have 2 perks
2, yes.
before we approve a new house. Just doing 1 perk and finding that 1 perk was not in a good representation of the soils is a little risky. Going on, we have had a bylaw or a regulation, not a bylaw, a regulation that if you had a long sewer line, you had to put a notice in your deed so that someone buying the house knew that they had a system and could get away. What happened was we had a couple of people come forward and say, look, my system is a good deal further from my house, somewhere in the vicinity of 100 feet, but it goes right down and is beside my driveway. Do I really have to do this? Because obviously I'm looking at it every time I drive into my house. So we rewrote this: obscure system locations. If a portion of a septic or sewage disposal system is located out of the improved portion of a lot and or out of sight from the commonly used areas, the Board of Health will require deed notification as to the need to inspect on an annual basis and maintain the septic and sewage disposal system. And this just notified someone buying a house, who might not even be familiar with sewage systems, that they've got one that's some distance away. And our experience has been that the only thing people look at, or their attorneys when they're buying a house, is the deed in the registry of deeds. We can have a 2-page permit for the sewage system and nobody will even ask to look at it. So that's why we want this noted. In Regulation 10, pump systems, pretty much redundant of Title V, and we just felt it was obvious and there was no sense just printing things that were just a reprint of Title V. And that's about it. We had one engineer ask us about our variances and did we have to have hearings for everything. And didn't think he read our regs very carefully because we do not. Our policy on variances, if the variance is not going to affect anyone else other than the person owning the lot, we will go forward. If it affects any abutters, then we will call a hearing unless the proponent can go to those abutters and get a letter from each of them that they have no objection to the proposal. In that case, we do not call a hearing if everybody's on board with it. Yeah, however, if someone does dissent to the idea, then we hold a public hearing and discuss it. If it is something to do with Title V variance and there's objections to it, the hearing will be broadcast. If it's just straightening out a local reg, we usually don't. And of course, we're broadcasting this because it sort of affects everyone. On wells, we don't have a great deal. We did just reiterate that we have a regulation that if you're going to destroy an existing drilled well, you're supposed to have it overseen at least by a licensed well driller, making sure they seal it properly, because when you think about it, an unused well is a direct route to a deep aquifer. So if something got in it that was bad, it would really screw up a lot of the deep aquifer. However, in the case of a shallow well, any of our licensed septic system installers may take care of that, as it usually is a truckload of sand. Let's see, what's the next one? We have a regulation that with an easement, you should be 15 feet away, and if it's non-contaminating, such as an easement just to run an underground power cable, power service. An easement that has possible contamination, use whatever distance would normally be required in our regulations or Title V for an offset from the point of contamination. On our building footprint to a well, if it's a drilled well, you can drill it as little as 10 feet from your foundation. If you're working with a shallow well, we like 20 feet. Oh, and this one is quite important. We've had a number of people want to put in irrigation wells. And we have a regulation that says you're not supposed to tie the plumbing between your irrigation well and your potable water source, but you normally use the well for your home. We're going to insert something here. Most of the irrigation wells we've had meet our regulations for a potable water supply. So if someone were to cheat and cross-plumb them, so to speak, they're probably pretty well protected, although it hasn't been tested. So we put in an irrigation well must meet the requirements of a potable well, or a deed notification must be filed at the registry of deeds that the irrigation well does not meet potable standards and the reason why it does not. This is again just so that an unsuspecting buyer has trouble with a pump or something in their well and says, well, I've got that irrigation well, we can just draw water out of that temporarily, permanently. which is no problem with it, if it is a good well and meets our standards. If it turns out it's right beside a potential pollution source, such as the leach system, we really don't want them to do it. We want them to know that they are taking a real chance. And I think that is about it. Nothing very exciting, really. And our only attendee is Rebecca from the Conservation Commission. Do you have any comments for us?
I don't. We certainly appreciate that, whether on purpose or not, coincidentally, you were mindful of the 100-foot buffer from the wetlands, along with the 25-foot no disturbance. And I did get a chance to speak with Bill this past week about just my questions and concerns specific to what the changes in Title V laterally versus the horizontal setback that was in the past, a little bit more distant, but he clarified for that for me. And understandably, it's not unless there's an extravagant failure of the system that would even come into play.
Exactly. Yeah, we try to do as much as we can with 100-foot. We have in the past approved some systems less than 100 feet. And of course, you have a second approval process. And we usually ask the people to use some nitrogen reduction technique, often a fast, so-called fast system, which is basically a little miniature sewage treatment plant that goes in a septic tank, and or, again, additional depth to the water table so that the thing doesn't go down, it's better protected. Okay, unless anybody else is, Mr. Rogers, I've been doing all the talking.
You're the chair. So that's,
Yeah, but you're the senior member.
I am. I've been through a few of these. No comment. I mean, we've discussed it. We've, I think, covered it well, and obviously it's a burning issue in the town of Walton.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So,
Bill?
no, it's good to
We
be.
haven't even had to have a police officer come to our meetings to
Exactly.
quell a rioting crowd. Okay, on that note, we will bring our hearing to a close. And basically, so will we close our meeting, as it was our only work. So could I have a motion?
We make a motion to
Adjourn?
adjourn.
All right, I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
We have completed our meeting and our hearing.